My family branded me a failure, whispering pity at my brother's engagement dinner. I stayed silent until his fiancée stared and gasped. "Wait, you're her?" The room froze, my mother's wineglass trembling in her hand. I stood at the edge of the Edgewater Hotel's grand ballroom, the Seattle skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a constellation of ambition mirrored in the black waters of Puget Sound. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the crowd, tech moguls, venture capitalists, and corporate titans swirling in a sea of tailored tuxedos and shimmering gowns. The air buzzed with the kind of self-assured chatter that only comes with power. But I felt like an intruder in my own story. At 32, I was Eleanor Harper, Chief Visionary Officer of VitalSync, a health tech empire poised to redefine medicine. Yet here, among the elite, I was invisible. Until the moment a rival's voice sliced through the noise and shattered the carefully constructed walls of my double life. "Eleanor Harper, isn't it?" The words came from Lauren Pierce, Vice President of Mergers at Nexus Health Technologies, her burgundy gown catching the light as she leaned forward, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. She stood at the head table where my brother Nathan, her fiancé, beamed obliviously. The room didn't stop, not exactly, but I felt the shift, a ripple of curiosity from nearby tables. My parents, Dr. Edward Harper and Catherine Harper, froze mid-conversation, their champagne flutes suspended like props in a play gone off-screen. Lauren's eyes locked onto mine, gleaming with the thrill of exposure. The mastermind behind VitalSync, the platform that's got every hospital in America scrambling to keep up. Tell me, how does it feel to hide a $300 million zero-cent empire from your own family? The silence that followed was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. My father's glass slipped, splashing Dom Perignon across the pristine tablecloth. My mother's hand fluttered to her diamond necklace, her lawyer's composure cracking. Nathan's jaw dropped, his cardiologist's confidence replaced by a boyish confusion I hadn't seen since we were kids. The gala's hum faded, and for a moment it was just me, standing in a simple black dress, my secret laid bare before the people who'd spent my life dismissing me. I could have laughed at the absurdity, years of silence, of coding in shadows, of dodging their pity, undone by a corporate rival's calculated jab, but laughter was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not when Lauren's revelation wasn't just a social bombshell, it was a warning shot in a war I hadn't chosen. I forced a smile, the kind I'd perfected in boardrooms when stakes were life or math. "Lauren, you give me too much credit," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline spiking through me. "VitalSync's a team effort. I'm just one piece of the puzzle." It was a deflection, but her smirk told me she wasn't buying it. She knew the truth. I was the architect of a platform that cut medical errors by 55%, saved countless lives, and now threatened her company's dominance. And she'd just made sure my family, my Achilles heel, knew it too. As the crowd resumed its chatter, my parents' eyes bored into me, a mix of shock and something darker. Betrayal, maybe, or the sting of being outplayed. Nathan approached, his tuxedo impeccable but his expression raw. "Ellie, what the hell was that?" he whispered, using the nickname I hadn't heard in years. "Is she serious? You're some tech billionaire?" I wanted to answer, to bridge the chasm between us, but Lauren was watching, and the weight of her words lingered. This wasn't just about family drama. Nexus Health was circling VitalSync like a shark, and Lauren's move was strategic. I was exposed, and the game had just gotten deadly. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the manicured lawns and quiet ambition of Bellevue, Washington, where I grew up in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. My father, Edward Harper, wasn't just a neurosurgeon. He was the man who saved senators and CEOs, the one other doctors called when hope was a flicker. My mother, Catherine, commanded courtrooms as an antitrust lawyer, dismantling corporate giants with a smile that could freeze blood. Then there was Nathan, 4 years my senior, the golden son who followed Dad into medicine with the ease of a river finding its course. Our home was a showcase of success. Marble countertops, framed degrees, and a dining room where every meal was a performance. Dinner wasn't about eating, it was about proving your worth. "What did you accomplish today?" Mom would ask, her fork poised like a gavel. Nathan always had an answer that sparkled. Perfect MCAT scores, a research grant, a glowing letter from a hospital chief. When my turn came, I'd mumble about my latest coding project, my voice shrinking under their gazes. "That's creative," Mom would say, her tone dripping with the kind of pity reserved for lost cause. Dad would nod, already turning to Nathan's next triumph. The message was clear. Medicine and law were real careers. Computers? Those were toys for kids who didn't know better. By 14, I was obsessed with code. I'd spend nights in my room, the glow of my monitor casting shadows across posters of Ada Lovelace and Grace Hopper. I taught myself Python, then JavaScript, losing myself in lines of logic that felt like magic. One weekend, I hacked my high school's clunky website, redesigning it to be faster, sleeker, intuitive. My classmates whispered about it in awe, but when I showed my parents, Dad chuckled, "Clever, Ellie, but shouldn't you be studying for AP Bio? That's what colleges care about." Mom's smile didn't reach her eyes. "It's a nice hobby, sweetheart. Just don't let it distract you." My bedroom became my fortress, a sanctuary of glowing screens and scribbled algorithms. While Nathan's walls boasted academic plaques, mine were plastered with printouts of code and sketches of app interfaces. I'd stay up until 3 a.m. debugging scripts, then drag myself to school, my eyes burning, but my heart alive. My parents never noticed the exhaustion, unless it dented my grades. "Focus, Eleanor," Mom would snap when my chemistry score dipped. "You're a Harper. Act like it." At 16, I built my first real project, an app for our school's annual charity auction. It streamlined bids, tracked donations, and cut organizing costs by half. The event coordinator, Mrs. Larson, was floored. "Eleanor, this is professional grade," she gushed at a school assembly. "You've got a gift." I beamed, clutching her praise like a lifeline. But at home, Mom barely glanced at the app. "That's cute, honey," she said, flipping through a legal brief. "But debate team would look better on your applications." Dad didn't even look up from his medical journal. That same year, my world nearly imploded. I'd been working on an early version of what would become VitalSync, a platform to streamline medical data sharing, sparked by a news story about a patient who died from a miscommunicated allergy. I stored my prototype on a personal server, my pride and joy. One night, my phone buzzed with an alert. Unauthorized access detected. My heart plummeted. A rival prodigy from a nearby school, jealous of my rising star in coding circles, had hacked my server. By morning, chunks of my code were circulating on dark web forums, mocked as amateur hour. I spent weeks rebuilding, fortifying my defenses, my confidence in tatters. Worse, when I tried to explain the breach to Dad, he sighed. "This is why you need a real career, Ellie. Tech is too unstable." The hack wasn't just a violation. It was a wake-up call. I realized then that my dreams were under attack, not just from my family, but from a world that saw my ambition as a target. I doubled down, coding with a ferocity that scared even me. My room became a war room, every line of code a defiance of their doubts. At 17, I entered a national coding competition, pouring months into an inventory management system that could revolutionize small hospitals. I qualified for the finals, held in San Francisco, my first taste of a world that valued my mind. But the competition fell on the same weekend as Nathan's award ceremony at Seattle General, where he was named Resident of the Year. "We're so proud of Nathan," Mom said. her voice syrupy as she packed for his event. "You understand, right, Ellie? This is a big deal. You'll have other coding things." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I competed alone, the only finalist without a cheering section, and won first place. The judges, Silicon Valley engineers, called my work visionary. I clutched my trophy on the flight home, a bittersweet weight. When I walked into our house, the living room was a sea of relatives toasting Nathan. Balloons bobbed, champagne flowed, and laughter filled the air. I stood in the doorway, trophy in hand, invisible. "Oh, Ellie, you're back," Dad said, glancing over. "That's wonderful, dear." He turned back to Nathan's colleagues, raising his glass. That night, in the quiet of my room, I made a vow. I would build something so undeniable, so earth-shaking, that they'd have to see me, not as Nathan's little sister, not as the family disappointment, but as Eleanor Harper, a force they couldn't ignore. Senior year was a battleground. College applications loomed, and my parents had their script ready. Harvard, Yale, Stanford. Pre-law or pre-med, nothing less. I had other plans. I applied to the University of Washington's computer science program, one of the best in the country, and secured a merit scholarship. When my acceptance letter arrived, Mom's face tightened. "Eleanor, this is a mistake," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Your SATs could get you into an Ivy. Computer science, that's for technicians," Dad was blunter. "You're throwing away your potential. Harpers don't settle for less." Nathan, home from his residency, tried to play peacemaker in his infuriatingly patronizing way. "Maybe it's a phase, Mom," he said, ruffling my hair like I was 12. "Let her tinker with her computers. She'll come around to law school." I wanted to scream, to tell them about the recruiters already circling my coding projects, but their certainty was a wall I couldn't breach. Instead, I packed for college with a mix of dread and exhilaration. For the first time, I'd be free to chase my dreams without their shadows. Then came the first blow. My parents cut my college funding. "If you insist on this path, you'll need to learn responsibility," Dad said, his tone clinical. "We're not bankrolling a whim." I was stunned. Nathan's medical school was fully funded, his apartment paid for, but I was on my own. I took a night job at a tech repair shop in Seattle's Fremont district, fixing cracked screens and rebooting routers while my classmates slept. The work was grueling, the hours brutal, but every paycheck was a brick in my foundation. I'd show them. I'd show them all. At UW's, I found my tribe. The computer science department was a buzzing hive of misfits and geniuses, people who spoke in algorithms and dreamed in code. For the first time, I wasn't the odd one out. Professors singled me out for my innovative approaches, and I soaked up their praise like a plant starved for sunlight. Sophomore year brought Sophie Chen, a coder as fierce as I was, with a fire in her eyes that matched my own. We met in an advanced algorithms class, bonding over a brutal group project that left our classmates floundering. While they struggled, we finished early, adding features just for the hell of it. One night, over coffee at the campus cafe, Sophie slammed her laptop shut, frustration radiating from her. "My dad nearly died last year," she said, her voice tight. 3 hospitals, 3 different diagnoses, all because their systems couldn't talk to each other. "It's a broken system, Ellie." Her words hit me like lightning. I'd been haunted by that news story from years ago, the patient killed by a data glitch. That night, we sketched out VitalSync, a platform to unify medical records, streamline communication, and save lives. It wasn't just an idea, it was a mission. We started in Sophie's parents' garage in Redmond, a cluttered space they cleared for us with warm smiles and endless plates of dumplings. Unlike my family, the Chens believed in us. "You're going to change the world," Sophie's mom said, squeezing my shoulder. The contrast was stark. My parents hadn't called since I left for college. their silence a louder rebuke than words. But the world wasn't as kind as the Chens. In our first year, a rival health tech firm, Medcore, planted a mole in our fledgling team. We'd hired a developer, Greg, whose resume sparkled. 6 months in, Sophie caught him downloading our source code to an external drive. He'd been feeding it to Medcore, who used it to build a knockoff platform. We fired him, but the damage was done. Our prototype was compromised, and Medcore's version hit the market first. We nearly went bankrupt, our dream hanging by a thread. Sophie and I worked 20-hour days to rebuild. Our trust shattered, but our resolve ironclad. We added encryption layers, hired a cybersecurity consultant, and clawed our way back. By junior year, VitalSync's beta was ready. We entered a national startup pitch competition, nerves jangling as we faced a panel of stone-faced VCs. Our demo, a sleek interface that cut data retrieval time by 70%, left them speechless. We won $100,000, 0 cents, and a patent. Our first real victory. Dr. Rachel Kwan, CEO of Puget Sound Medical Center, saw our pitch and called us the next day. "This could save lives," she said, her voice trembling with urgency. "How soon can you launch a pilot?" We were in. Our first client. Our first proof that VitalSync wasn't just a dream. But success came with enemies. Medcore, furious at our comeback, slapped us with a patent infringement lawsuit, claiming our platform mimicked theirs. It was a lie, a desperate attempt to bury us in legal fees. Sophie and I spent nights poring over documents, our savings dwindling as we fought to prove our code was original. The stress was crushing. Sophie lost 10 pounds, and I barely slept, haunted by the fear of losing everything. We won the case, but the victory was hollow, our resources drained, and our spirits battered. Back home, nothing had changed. At Thanksgiving, I drove to Bellevue, bracing for the inevitable. The dining room was a shrine to Nathan. His medical awards gleamed on the mantel, his engagement to Lauren Pierce the night's centerpiece. I sat quietly, picking at my turkey, as relatives fawned over Nathan's latest promotion. When Mom asked about my work, I mumbled about tech stuff. Dad leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Ellie, I spoke to a friend at the hospital. They need clerical staff. It's stable, something to tide you over while you figure out this startup nonsense." His laugh was a blade cutting through years of effort. I forced a smile, my hands trembling under the table. They didn't know VitalSync had just signed contracts with 10 West Coast hospitals, or that I was on the verge of something monumental, and I didn't tell them. Not yet. After graduation, Sophie and I moved into a shoebox loft in Seattle's Capitol Hill, the kind of place where the heat flickered and the walls were paper thin. We lived on instant ramen and Red Bull, coding until our eyes burned. A $500,000 0 cents angel investment from a competition judge changed everything. We hired Liam, a cybersecurity genius who'd once hacked the Pentagon for fun, and set up shop in a co-working space that smelled of burnt coffee, and VitalSync was growing fast. Hospitals were calling, desperate for our platform. We were saving lives, one data point at a time. But my family remained a black hole. At Christmas, Nathan announced his engagement to Lauren, a biotech exec with a Harvard MBA and a smile that could sell ice to penguins. Mom gushed, Dad toasted, and I sat there, the invisible sister. Later, Mom cornered me in the kitchen. "Ellie, Nathan's friend James is single," she said, swirling her wine. "He's a corporate lawyer, very successful. I could arrange a meeting." The implication was clear. If I couldn't be successful, I could at least marry it. I nodded, my throat tight, and slipped away. They didn't know VitalSync was now worth millions, or that I was about to face the fight of my life. The gala's aftermath was chaos. As I slipped out of the ballroom, Lauren's words echoed in my mind. $300 million. 0 cents. She'd blown my cover. But why? Was it a power play, a warning, or something darker? My phone buzzed. Sophie, frantic. "Ellie, check your email. Nexus just sent a revised offer. They're pushing hard, and I don't trust them." I ducked into a quiet alcove, my heart racing. The email was a bombshell. Nexus Health wanted VitalSync, and they weren't playing nice. Hidden in the fine print was a clause that would strip me of control post-acquisition. Lauren wasn't just Nathan's fiancée, she was the enemy, and she'd just declared war. I glanced back at the ballroom where my parents were huddled with Nathan, their faces a mix of confusion and calculation. For years, I'd hidden my success to protect it from their dismissal. Now, it was out, and the stakes were higher than ever. Nexus was circling, my family was reeling, and somewhere in the shadows, I sensed a threat I couldn't yet name. One thing was certain, I'd built VitalSync from nothing, and I'd fight to the death to keep it. The question was, how far would my enemies go to take it from me? The Edgewater Hotel's ballroom felt like a battlefield after Lauren Pierce's bombshell. Her words, $300 million, 0 cents. VitalSync. My name hung in the air like smoke after an explosion, choking the chatter of Seattle's elite. I stood frozen, my black dress suddenly too tight, my heart hammering as every eye in the room swiveled toward me. My father, Dr. Edward Harper, stared, his champagne glass dangling precariously, a crimson stain spreading across the tablecloth where he'd spilled. My mother, Catherine, clutched her diamond necklace, her lawyer's poise crumbling into something raw, almost accusatory. Nathan, my brother, gaped, his cardiologist's confidence replaced by a stunned silence that cut deeper than any of their past dismissals. Lauren, Nathan's fiancée and Nexus Health's VP of Mergers, watched me with a predator's smile, her burgundy gown glinting like armor. She'd exposed me, not just to my family, but to a room full of power players. And the weight of that betrayal was a blade at my throat. I forced my voice to stay calm, a skill honed in boardrooms where millions hung in the balance. "Lauren, you're too kind," I said, my smile a shield. "VitalSync's success belongs to my team, not just me." It was a lie by omission. I was the architect, the one who'd bled for every line of code, but I needed to deflect, to buy time. Lauren's eyes narrowed, her expression saying she saw through me. She knew VitalSync's platform, which slashed medical errors by 68% at top hospitals, was my creation. She knew Nexus Health was desperate to acquire us. And she'd just turned my family into leverage in her corporate chess game. The crowd resumed its buzz, but the damage was done. Relatives who'd pitied me moments ago now whispered, their glances a mix of awe and opportunism. My cousin Margaret, who'd asked about my job situation with the delicacy of a funeral director, leaned in. "Eleanor, is it true? You're rich?" I sidestepped her, my focus on my parents. Dad's face was a storm cloud, Mom's a mask of calculation. Nathan approached, his tuxedo pristine but his voice low, almost pleading. "Ellie, why didn't you tell us? A $300 million 0 cents company? You let us think you were—" He trailed off. The word failure unspoken, but deafening. I wanted to explain, to tell him about the years of their dismissal, the nights I coded until dawn to prove them wrong. But Lauren was still watching, and the air felt charged with something darker than family drama. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from Sophie Chen, my co-founder. "Nexus knows too much. Check your email. We're in trouble." My stomach lurched. This wasn't just about my family's shock. Lauren's revelation was a calculated move in a war I hadn't fully grasped, and I was exposed, vulnerable, a target. The days after the gala were a blur of chaos and paranoia. I drove back to my waterfront condo in Seattle's Belltown district, the city's lights reflecting off Puget Sound like a warning. My minimalist apartment, clean lines, white walls, a single orchid on the counter, was my sanctuary, bought with VitalSync's first major profits. But tonight it felt like a glass cage. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of Pinot Noir, and opened Sophie's email on my lap. The subject line was stark: Nexus escalation. Urgent. The message detailed a revised acquisition offer, $300 million, 0 cents, but with strings attached. Control clauses that would gut VitalSync's autonomy, demote me to a figurehead, and hand our algorithms to Nexus. Worse, there were hints of insider knowledge, details about our proprietary tech that no outsider should have. Sophie's final line chilled me. Someone's leaking, Ellie, and I don't think it's just Lauren. I paced, the wine untouched. VitalSync wasn't just a company, it was my life's work, born from a teenage dream to fix a broken healthcare system. At 26, we'd grown to 50 employees, secured $10 million, 0 cents in funding, and moved into a sleek office overlooking the Sound. Our platform was in 250 hospitals, cutting errors by 55% and boosting patient outcomes by 45%. Cascade Health Network's recent contract for 30 hospitals promised a $50 million, 0 cents, revenue spike. But success had painted a target on my back. Nexus Health, a behemoth in health tech, saw us as a threat. Their initial $80 million 0 cents offer, which I'd rejected to protect our vision, was a gentleman's handshake compared to this hostile push. I thought back to the gala, replaying Lauren's words. She wasn't just Nathan's fiancée, she was Nexus's weapon, and her outing me felt like the opening salvo in a takeover. But how did she know so much? And why now? My mind raced to darker possibilities. 3 weeks ago, I'd found a note slipped under my apartment door. Stop VitalSync, or you'll regret it. The handwriting was jagged, the paper cheap. I'd assumed it was Greg, the developer we'd fired for leaking code to Medcore years ago. He'd been bitter, his emails after his termination laced with venom. But this felt bigger, more organized. Corporate spies? A Nexus insider? The thought made my skin crawl. I called Sophie, my voice low despite the empty apartment. We need to lock down everything, I said. Code, contracts, employee access. If Nexus has a mole, we're bleeding. Sophie's voice was steady, her coders calm, a lifeline. Already on it, Liam's running a security sweep. But Ellie, there's more. Pacific Ventures, our biggest investor. Called. They're demanding a board seat and veto power over major decisions. If we say no, they'll pull their $40 million 0 cents stake. I sank onto the couch, my head spinning. Pacific Ventures had been our lifeline. Their investment, valuing VitalSync at $200 million, 0 cents. I'd cultivated a phantom genius persona, using only my first name in press to keep control. But now, control was slipping. The Wired feature last month, which praised VitalSync but showed me only in shadow, had called me a visionary. Now, that anonymity felt like a noose. Pacific's betrayal was a gut punch. Were they in league with Nexus? The timing was too perfect. Set up a meeting with Pacific, I told Sophie. We'll fight this. And get Liam to trace that note. If Greg's behind it, we need proof. I hung up, my resolve hardening. I'd built VitalSync from a garage prototype to an empire. I wasn't letting it go without a war. The next morning, my phone was a war zone. Texts from relatives I hadn't seen in years flooded in, their tone a mix of fawning and opportunistic. Eleanor, we always knew you were special. Can we talk investments? My cousin Margaret, who'd pitied me at the gala, left a voicemail asking for a small loan. I ignored them, but my parents' message was harder to dismiss. We need to talk, Eleanor. Lunch at Canlis, noon. Don't be late. The formality stung, as if I were a client, not their daughter. I drove to Bellevue, my old Toyota Corolla, a deliberate choice to maintain my underdog facade. My waterfront condo and designer wardrobe were secrets I'd guarded, letting my family assume I was scraping by. At home, I was the disappointing daughter who'd wasted her potential on computers, while in tech circles, I was a trailblazer. The duality had been my armor, but Lauren's revelation had stripped it away. Canlis, with its panoramic views of Lake Union, was my parents' stage for serious talks. They sat at a corner table, Dad in a tailored suit, Mom in a cream blazer, her hair pulled back like she was prepping for court. I slid into the seat opposite, bracing for the inquisition. Dad spoke first, his voice low but sharp. "Eleanor, why would you hide this? A $300 million 0-cents company? We're your family." I took a sip of water, steadying myself. "You never asked," I said, my tone even. "Every time I tried to share my work, you called it a hobby, a distraction. You wanted me to be Nathan, or you, or Mom, anything but me." Mom's eyes flashed, her lawyer's instinct kicking in. "That's unfair. We pushed you to excel. Technology is unreliable. We were protecting you." "Protecting me?" I laughed, the sound bitter. "You cut my college funding because I chose computer science. You offered me a clerical job at Thanksgiving, Dad, while I was signing deals with hospitals. You didn't protect me. You dismissed me." The words hung between us, raw and unfiltered. Dad's jaw tightened, but Mom leaned forward, her voice softening. "We didn't know, Eleanor. You never told us. How could we support what we didn't understand?" I wanted to believe her, but years of their condescension, Mom's cute project remarks, Dad's sighs when I mentioned coding, made trust impossible. "You could have asked," I said again, quieter this time. "Really asked, not just waited for an answer that fit your narrative." The waiter arrived with our salads, breaking the tension, but the silence that followed was heavy. As we ate, Mom tried a different tack. "Nathan's devastated, you know. He feels betrayed. You let him think you were..." Struggling. The mention of Nathan stung. He'd always been the golden son, his medical career a beacon my parents worshipped. At Christmas, when he announced his engagement to Lauren, a biotech executive with a resume that sparkled, they'd practically thrown a parade. I'd sat quietly, dodging Mom's attempt to set me up with a lawyer friend of Nathan's. Her implication clear. I needed a real man to fix my aimless life. Now Nathan's devastation felt like another layer of their narrative, one where I was the villain for daring to succeed in secret. "I'll talk to Nathan," I said finally, pushing my plate away. "But I need you to understand something. Vital Sync isn't just a job. It's saving lives. Thousands of them. And I built it despite you, not because of you." Dad's eyes flickered, a rare crack in his surgeon's composure. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "We're proud of you, Eleanor," she said, her voice trembling. "We just need time to process." I nodded, but their pride felt hollow, a reaction to headlines, not me. Back at Vital Sync's office, the Puget Sound sparkled outside, but inside it was war. Sophie and Liam were hunched over laptops, their faces grim. "We've got a problem," Liam said, sliding a tablet toward me. It showed a dark web thread, anonymous but precise, detailing Vital Sync's encryption protocols, information only an insider could know. "This leaked 2 days ago," he said, "right before Nexus's new offer. Someone's feeding them our playbook." I felt a chill, remembering the note under my door. Greg, our disgruntled ex-employee, was my first suspect, but this was too sophisticated for a lone actor. "Any trace?" I asked. Liam shook his head. "They're using VPNs, bouncing signals through servers in Russia and Singapore. But I found something else." He pulled up a grainy security feed from my apartment building. A hooded figure, face obscured, lingered near my door the night the note appeared. My pulse quickened. "Greg?" I asked. Liam shrugged. "Maybe, but this feels bigger." That night, I stayed late, the office empty except for the hum of servers. I was reviewing Pacific Ventures' demands when my phone buzzed. A blocked number. I hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice rasped through the line. "Sell VitalSync, or you're done." The call cut off before I could respond. My hands shook as I dialed Sophie. "We need to hire security," I said, my voice tight. "This isn't just corporate games anymore." The next morning, Pacific Ventures CEO Victor Lang arrived at our office, his shark-like grin setting my nerves on edge. "Eleanor, let's be reasonable," he said, leaning back in our conference room. "Your vision's inspiring, but you're in over your head. Give us control or we walk. $40 million, 0 cents. Gone." His tone was velvet, but the threat was steel. I leaned forward, my voice cold. "VitalSync's worth 10 times your stake, Victor. Pull your money. We'll survive." His smile faltered, but he nodded. "Bold move. Hope you don't regret it." As he left, Sophie pulled me aside. "Ellie, we can't lose Pacific. We're stretched thin. Cascade's rollout, the lawsuit, now this. We need their cash." I knew she was right, but ceding control meant betraying everything I'd built. "We'll find another investor," I said, hoping I sounded surer than I felt. But doubt gnawed at me. Was Victor bluffing, or was he Nexus's puppet? The threats escalated. 2 nights later, I was walking to my car in VitalSync's parking garage when headlights blinded me. A black SUV roared forward, tires screeching, missing me by inches. I dove behind a pillar, my heart pounding as the vehicle sped off. No license plate, no witnesses. I called Liam, who analyzed the garage's cameras. Erased, professionally wiped. "This isn't Greg," he said grimly. "This is corporate. Nexus or someone they hired." I hired a security team the next day, ex-Navy SEALs, who shadowed me discreetly, but the fear lingered. Someone wanted me out, permanently. My therapist, Dr. Ellis, was my anchor. In her quiet office, I poured out the chaos, the gala, the threats, my family's betrayal. "You've spent years craving their validation," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Now that it's within reach, why does it feel so empty?" I stared at the floor, grappling with the truth. "Because it's not about them anymore," I admitted. "I want to know I'm enough, with or without their approval." Dr. Ellis nodded. "That's the real battle, Eleanor. Not Nexus, not your family, you." Her words stayed with me, but the world didn't wait for self-discovery. The media frenzy hit like a tsunami. A leaked story about Nexus's $300 million 0 cents offer splashed across TechCrunch, complete with my name and a grainy photo from the gala. Eleanor Harper, the ghost genius behind VitalSync. My inbox exploded. Reporters, investors, even high school classmates sniffing for a piece of the pie. The scrutiny was suffocating, my anonymity shattered. I suspected Lauren's hand. Another move to destabilize me. Then came the kidnapping attempt. I was leaving a late-night meeting with Cascade Health when a van pulled up, its side door sliding open. 2 men in ski masks lunged for me, but my security team intervened, tackling them to the ground. The men escaped, leaving behind a burner phone with a single text. "Last warning." My SEALs traced the phone to a dead end, but the message was clear. Nexus, or someone in their orbit, was willing to kill to get VitalSync's algorithms. I moved to a safe house, a nondescript apartment in Queen Anne, my life now a chessboard of threats and countermeasures. Amid the chaos, Nathan reached out. He showed up at VitalSync's office unannounced, his face haggard. "Ellie, I need to understand," he said, his voice raw. "Why didn't you tell me? I thought you were lost." The word stung, a reminder of the hierarchy we'd grown up in. Him the star, me the shadow. I wanted to lash out, to list every time he dismissed me, but his eyes held something new. Vulnerability. You never asked, Nathan, I said, softer than I meant. None of you did. It was easier to let you think I was nothing than to fight for scraps of your approval. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it ached. I was a jerk, okay? I liked being the successful one. It defined me. But this? He gestured at the office, the monitors flashing VitalSync's interface. This is bigger than anything I've done. I'm proud of you, Ellie, and I'm sorry. His apology was a crack in the wall between us, but I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Thanks, I said, my voice tight, but I've got a war to fight. Nexus isn't playing games. Nathan's eyes widened. Lauren's company? Is she involved? The question hung, heavy with implication. I didn't answer, but the seed was planted. Was Nathan's sudden remorse genuine, or was he fishing for Lauren? Curiosity gnawed at me, a puzzle I couldn't solve. The final blow came at a family dinner, a tense affair at my parents' Bellevue mansion. Mom had insisted, claiming we needed to reconnect. I arrived, flanked by my security team, who waited outside. The dining room was a time capsule. Nathan's awards still gleamed, my childhood relegated to a single photo on the wall. Dad poured wine, his hands steady but his eyes avoiding mine. Mom launched into a speech about family unity, but it felt rehearsed, a performance for their own consciences. Then Dad dropped the bombshell. Eleanor, I've been meaning to tell you, he said, his tone too casual. Years ago I invested in a health tech startup. Medcore, I think it was called. A small world, isn't it? My fork clattered to the plate. Medcore? The company that nearly destroyed VitalSync with their stolen code. My father, the man who'd mocked my career, had funded my enemy. Why? I asked, my voice shaking. He shrugged, oblivious to the betrayal. It seemed promising. I didn't know it was related. I stood, my chair scraping the floor. You didn't know because you never cared enough to ask what I was doing. You funded the people who tried to bury me. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Eleanor, don't be dramatic. We're trying to support you now. The word now was a slap. I walked out, their voices fading behind me, my world tilting on its axis. The climax came days later. Liam uncovered a chilling truth. The assassination plot wasn't a rumor. A Nexus insider, desperate to stop VitalSync's independence, had hired a hitman. The evidence was thin. A coded email, a bank transfer to a shell company. But it was enough. I met with Lauren at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in Pioneer Square, my security team nearby. She was polished, her smile disarming. But I saw the calculation beneath. Eleanor, let's end this, she said, sliding a contract across the table. $300 million, 0 cents. You stay on as a consultant. It's a win-win. I leaned forward, my voice ice. Did you hire the hitman, Lauren? Or was that your boss? Her eyes flickered, a split second of fear. You're paranoid, she said, but her hand trembled. I stood, leaving the contract untouched. Tell Nexus I don't scare easy, and if anything happens to me, my team has instructions to release everything. Your leaks, your threats, all of it. It was a bluff, but it landed. She paled, and I walked out, my heart pounding but my resolve steel. The acquisition closed the next week, but on my terms. Nexus paid $300 million, 0 cents. But I retained control of VitalSync's innovation arm, ensuring our mission stayed intact. Sophie and I were billionaires overnight, our faces splashed across Forbes. The ghost genius was gone, replaced by Eleanor Harper, unapologetic and unstoppable. The emotional crescendo came at a quiet dinner with Nathan and Lauren. Weeks later, Nathan had distanced himself from Lauren's corporate games, his loyalty shifting to me. "I was blind, Ellie," he said, his voice thick. "But I see you now. You're incredible." Lauren, humbled by the fallout, offered a tentative olive branch. "I underestimated you," she admitted. "I'd like to learn from you if you'll let me." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. My parents were slower to change, but small gestures. A call from Dad to discuss VitalSync's impact. A visit from Mom to our office hinted at progress. The real victory was internal. In Dr. Ellis's office, I realized I no longer needed their validation. I'd built VitalSync, saved lives, and faced down death threats. I was enough. The chapter closed with me mentoring a group of high school girls in a Seattle STEM program, their eyes wide as I shared my story. My family thought coding was a waste, I told them, but I believed in my vision, and it changed the world. Find your vision, and don't let anyone dim it. As they clapped, I felt a surge of purpose. Lighting Sync was my legacy, but this, lighting the way for others, was my triumph.